The night was supposed to begin calmly, with the promise of clarity and reconciliation hanging in the air. Viewers tuned in expecting a conversation marked by composure, a dialogue that would perhaps mend wounds and bridge the divide. Instead, what unfolded was a jolt. Sparks ignited instantly, and within moments the room felt less like a safe space for healing and more like a battlefield brimming with hostility. Every glance carried weight. Every pause carried suspicion. From the very first exchange, the mood was tense. There was no gentle warm-up, no easing into pleasantries. The energy snapped, sharp and unrelenting, like a fuse lit too close to a flame. What began as an opportunity to address unspoken grievances suddenly transformed into an explosive confrontation. The air thickened. Words became weapons. Each sentence landed like a blow meant to draw blood rather than invite peace. This wasn't the controlled environment that fans anticipated. This was raw. This was volatile. The table intended for resolution became a stage for resentment. The smiles from earlier in the evening evaporated into icy stares. Promises of an honest talk dissolved as voices clashed, and the past came flooding back with brutal force. The audience felt it instantly. That gut-level recognition that something had snapped. That recognition that the night would not end as it began. Tension gripped every second, and silence was no longer neutral. Even in the gaps between words, the weight of unsaid accusations echoed louder than the dialogue itself. At the heart of the eruption lies the central question haunting not just the couple but every witness. Can this relationship survive the storm? The stakes are no longer abstract. They are immediate, visceral, and undeniable. A collapse here means more than gossip. It means unraveling years of sacrifice, trust, and the fragile hope that once glued this marriage together. And yet, neither side seemed willing to retreat. Pride flared. Old wounds reopened. Every attempt to soften the tone only sharpened the next retort. It was as though both had rehearsed their grievances, ready to fire them like ammunition in a war neither wanted but both refused to abandon. Viewers could hardly look away. What was meant to soothe instead spiraled into chaos before their very eyes. The anticipation of peace was drowned by the roar of conflict. The unexpected became the inevitable, and the inevitable became terrifying. If this was the beginning, how brutal could the end be? By the close of the opening moments, the narrative was sealed. This wasn't going to be a story of quiet reconciliation. It was going to be a saga of rupture, a descent into emotional combat that left no safe ground. The explosive energy had already claimed the night, and the only certainty remaining was the storm still to come. Because when love is tested in public, under the glare of judgment and the shadow of betrayal, the question is never small. The question is survival. And tonight, survival itself felt uncertain. The sit-down was presented as a chance to cleanse the air before the trip to Puerto Rico. The objective was simple, at least on the surface. Address the whispers, clear the confusion, enter the upcoming getaway without lingering shadows. But almost immediately, the atmosphere betrayed that promise. Instead of ease, there was stiffness. Instead of open hearts, there was guarded silence. The very air around them seemed to hesitate, waiting for the first strike. At first, it was the stillness that spoke the loudest. That uncomfortable quiet stretched longer than anyone expected, heavy and deliberate. Silence can heal when paired with calm, but here it was suffocating, almost mocking. The unspoken words pressed harder than any sentence ever could. The audience watching knew this was not the kind of quiet that precedes peace. This was the quiet that signals a storm waiting to detonate. When words finally arrived, they did not soothe. They stung. The very first lines revealed a deeper truth. This was less about reconciliation and more about accusation. Each phrase sounded rehearsed, edged with an undertone of challenge. Even questions came across as tests, not genuine efforts at understanding. What should have been an exchange of sincerity quickly resembled a sparring match disguised as dialogue. Intentions crumbled fast. Yandy hoped to express her frustrations without igniting another war, but her tone betrayed exhaustion. Mendeecees appeared intent on defending himself before any blame was even placed. That contrast set the rhythm. Every point became a counterpoint. Every sigh became evidence. The table that was supposed to anchor reconciliation became a ring for subtle blows. The awkwardness thickened as eyes darted and expressions hardened. Small comments, easily brushed off in calmer times, now carried the sting of history. Words like "you always" or "you never" pierced like daggers sharpened over years of buried resentment. Instead of a cleansing talk, the conversation exposed fractures that ran far deeper than anyone admitted. The meeting's stated goal felt almost laughable now. Go to Puerto Rico free of tension. That was the hope. But within minutes, it became clear. Tension had already arrived, uninvited and unrelenting. The getaway was supposed to be a reset. Instead, it loomed as another battlefield waiting for its first explosion. Fans watching sensed it instantly. Every raised eyebrow, every clipped response, every pause brimming with words unsaid, all signaled that the marriage stood on dangerous ground. The energy was not healing. It was combustive. The kind that destroys bridges instead of building them. The kind that suggests the next chapter will be even darker than the last. Still, there was a haunting irony in those opening exchanges. Both came into the room knowing the stakes. Both came in knowing how much damage had already been done. Yet neither seemed willing to risk vulnerability. Pride remained the dominant language. Defense remained the default tone. And so reconciliation slipped further away with every passing second. By the time the first round of words was exchanged, the question was no longer whether Puerto Rico would fix anything. The question became whether Puerto Rico would survive the weight of what had already been unleashed. Because what began as an opportunity for peace had already transformed into another chapter of chaos. The meeting ended its early moments not with comfort, but with the unmistakable taste of dread. What was meant to save the trip now threatened to poison it. And viewers, once hopeful, were left gripping their seats, waiting for the inevitable explosion that the silence had promised all along. The calm could not last. The silence cracked, and when words finally came, they came with an edge that cut deep. The phrase was simple, almost casual on the surface, but it carried venom. You got funky. That single accusation shifted the entire room. What had been an uncomfortable pause turned instantly into a battlefield. Tone became sharper, faces hardened, and the audience knew immediately they were watching the first true clash of the night. Mendeecees threw the line like a stone. His voice steady, yet laced with irritation. He wanted to paint Yandy as the one who turned the atmosphere sour. But Yandy was not about to absorb the blow quietly. Her response came quick, cold, and measured to sting. She flipped the phrase back at him, making it clear that if there was funk in the room, it did not begin with her. The exchange set the rhythm. Accusation met by counter-accusation. No step backward. No hint of surrender. What followed was less dialogue, more duel. Every word stacked on top of the last, heavier, sharper, more piercing. They weren't talking to solve. They were talking to wound. And with each line, the cracks in their marriage became harder to hide. The spectators didn't just hear frustration. They felt history unraveling in real time. The phrase itself, "You got funky," may have sounded small, but it was loaded. It was not about one moment. It was about countless moments buried beneath the surface. Little slights, cold shoulders, Words never forgotten. This was no random remark. It was a trigger, a match tossed into a room already drenched in gasoline. Yandy leaned in with her own fire. She reminded him of the times his attitude poisoned the air, the nights he dismissed her feelings, the mornings when he acted like her presence was more burden than blessing. Her tone dripped with exhaustion. This was not just defense, it was confession. It was the voice of someone who had carried too much for too long. Mendeecees, unwilling to yield, pushed back harder. He turned the spotlight onto her, accusing her of twisting situations, of escalating when she should have de-escalated. To him, funky meant dramatic. It meant overreacting. It meant she always found a way to turn a small disagreement into a monumental fight. And with each word, he framed her as the problem, the fire starter, the reason why peace always collapsed. The back and forth grew sharper. Sentences shortened. Voices rose. The rhythm of the fight became rapid, relentless, impossible to stop. They interrupted, overlapped, cut each other down. Listeners could barely catch their breath before another barb was thrown. What was once an attempt to settle matters now spiraled into a storm where every old wound resurfaced. The phrase kept returning like a drumbeat. "You got funky." Each repetition carried new weight. Each time it landed, it reminded Yandy, and everyone watching, that this wasn't just about tonight. It was about the pattern, about the way small disagreements always spiraled into wars, about the way neither side could ever admit fault without sharpening the knife against the other. Fans watching at home were glued to the screen. They saw more than two people bickering. They saw the anatomy of a marriage breaking down piece by piece. They saw two souls too tired to compromise, too proud to soften, too wounded to forgive. Every glare, every shake of the head, every sarcastic laugh, signals that love was now wrestling with resentment in its rawest form. As the clash continued, the stakes became clearer. This was no trivial fight. This was not about who raised their voice first. It was about years of suppressed pain exploding in front of millions. Yandy's eyes revealed it. Mendeecees' tone confirmed it. This was not just about funk. It was about survival. By the end of that first confrontation, one truth could not be denied. The sit-down was no longer about clearing the air before Puerto Rico. That mission was already shattered. What remained was hostility, heavy and unresolved. And hanging in the air was one haunting realization. If a single phrase like "you got funky" could unleash this much chaos, then the road ahead promised nothing but deeper war. Yandy's voice shifted, trembling but unyielding, carrying the weight of years. She confessed what many had already suspected. She felt like she had been carrying the marriage alone. Her words were not soft pleas. They were indictments. Every syllable dripped with exhaustion, the kind that comes from constantly holding together something that keeps breaking apart. She painted herself as the backbone, the steady one, the person who refused to let everything collapse. And yet, in her tone, you could hear how much that role had drained her. She spoke of sacrifices, sleepless nights, the emotional labor invisible to outsiders but unavoidable for her. She reminded Mendeecees of the countless times she had put his needs above her own, how often she swallowed frustration just to keep the peace. Her voice cracked, not from weakness but from the sheer weight of truth. "I've been holding this together," she said, "while you've been watching it fall apart." Those words hit harder than any scream could. But Mendeecees was not ready to absorb blame without resistance. His defense came sharp, urgent, as if rehearsed over countless sleepless nights of his own. He insisted he had been fighting for them, that his efforts might look different, but they were efforts nonetheless. In his mind, he had been battling against outside pressures, personal struggles, and the chaos of their world to keep their union alive. He painted himself not as neglectful, but as a soldier who had been on the front lines in ways Yandy refused to see. The disconnect was brutal. Yandy's exhaustion versus Mendeecees' defense revealed not two versions of truth, but two entirely different realities. To her, his defense sounded like excuses. To him, her exhaustion sounded like dismissal. They weren't speaking the same language. They weren't even in the same universe. And that gap between their truths widened with every word spoken. The fallout was immediate. Yandy's face showed hurt not just from what was said, but from what wasn't. She wanted acknowledgement, validation, a simple recognition that yes, she had been the one carrying more than her share. Instead, she heard justification, a counterattack wrapped in claims of unseen battles. To her, it was as if he had erased her sacrifices with a single breath. Mendeecees, on the other hand, sat wounded by her accusations. He felt unseen, unappreciated, accused of abandonment when in his mind he had been the one silently pushing forward. Her words to him were not truth but betrayal, a rewriting of their history that left him cast as the villain. He carried his own bitterness, convinced that she would never truly see the weight he bore. This clash of perspectives left both sides raw. Neither won. Both left bruised. The deeper tragedy was not the words exchanged, but the proof they revealed. This was a marriage where two people believed they were fighting, but fighting in opposite directions. One believed she was carrying everything alone. The other believed he was defending them both from collapse. And in that dissonance lay the heartbreak. By the end of this exchange, reconciliation felt further than ever. Yandy's exhaustion hung heavy, undeniable. Mendeecees' defense echoed loud, insistent. But between them was only silence thick with misunderstanding. Fans watching could see it plainly. The most dangerous fractures are not the loud arguments, but the quiet realization that both partners feel abandoned at the same time. The temperature in the room shifted again when Yandy dropped her bombshell. Her words sliced through the conversation with precision, leaving no space for denial. She admitted she had been hearing things. Not from him. Not from their private conversations. But from outsiders, friends, associates, people who should have no place inside their marriage. The revelation was chilling. For her, it was proof that truths were being hidden, that whispers had more honesty than the man sitting across from her. The moment landed like an earthquake. Fans could feel the ground shake beneath the marriage. Yandy's tone was not fueled by rumor alone. It was fueled by pain. She demanded answers, clarity, something real. How could strangers be holding pieces of her story that he never confessed? Her voice made it clear. Trust was already fractured, and every whispered word deepened the break. Mendeecees did what many expected. He deflected. Instead of confronting the accusation directly, he shifted the weight back onto Yandy. He questioned why she would listen to others over him. He painted her as gullible, too eager to believe gossip, too quick to doubt him. His tone wasn't just defensive, it was accusatory, as though she was the problem for even entertaining outside voices. This is the classic blame shift dynamic, and it unfolded with brutal clarity. Yandy brought a concern. Mendes turned it into an attack on her judgment. Suddenly, the issue was not what he might have done, but why she dared to believe anyone else. In one move, the spotlight was redirected, and Yandy was left carrying the burden of suspicion rather than him carrying the weight of accountability. But the more he deflected, the more obvious the cracks became. Fans could see the pattern instantly. They had witnessed this dance before. Deflection is rarely silence, it is smoke. And smoke always makes people believe there is fire. Viewers watching from their couches leaned in closer. convinced that his evasions confirmed the very rumors he tried to dismiss. Social media exploded with speculation. Was he hiding something? Was Yandy right to suspect? Was this another case of secrets leaking before the truth is forced into the light? The deflection only made the questions louder. For every word Mendeecees spoke, fans wrote 10 more theories online. Yandy's eyes told the story. She wanted acknowledgement, not redirection. But what she received was a wall of denial disguised as defense. Each time she pressed for answers, he pushed the blame further onto her shoulders. Each time she sought honesty, he questioned her loyalty. And in those moments, viewers saw a marriage built less on trust and more on survival. By the time the exchange ended, one truth was undeniable. Bombshells had been dropped. Rumors had gained momentum. Deflection had left wounds deeper than answers. And the audience was left buzzing with a single thought. If whispers are this powerful, what must the hidden truth really be? The moment the episode aired, the internet erupted. Social media timelines transformed into war zones, flooded with clips, screenshots, and endless commentary. Fans wasted no time turning the chaos into a spectacle. Hashtags blazed across platforms, dominating trending lists within minutes. Yandy vs Mendeecees, a marriage meltdown. ARG explosive sit-down. Each one carried its own storm of arguments, jokes, and heartbreak. Memes spread like wildfire. That one phrase, "you got funky," became a punchline overnight. Users looped the clip, remixed it, and captioned it with every petty disagreement imaginable. But beneath the humor was real pain. Supporters of Yandy flooded the internet, declaring her strength, applauding her honesty, praising her for finally speaking the words many believed she had held in for years. They saw her as the warrior, the backbone, the one who had been carrying everything alone. Mendeecees was not without defenders. His loyal fans pushed back, arguing he had been misunderstood, that his deflections were really frustrations from always being cast as the villain. They claimed he was fighting in his own way, that the weight he carried was invisible to most. And so the digital battlefield split into factions. Team Yandy, Team Mendeecees, neither willing to surrender ground. The debates grew louder by the hour. Was Yandy justified in believing the whispers from outsiders? Was Mendeecees guilty of hiding truths or simply weary of constant accusations? Every pause, every glare, every clipped tone was dissected as if the viewers were detectives piecing together a crime scene. Blogs seized the moment. Headlines screamed of betrayal, exhaustion, and a marriage on the brink. Entertainment outlets replayed the confrontation on loop, ensuring no one could escape the drama even if they wanted to. The clip was unavoidable. It dominated feeds, from TikTok edits to late-night Twitter threads. The viral storm became bigger than the couple themselves. It wasn't just about what happened in that room. It was about what it represented: love under fire, loyalty questioned, sacrifice unacknowledged. Fans weren't simply watching a show. They were witnessing what felt like the unraveling of something sacred. And by the end of the night, one truth was clear. The internet had chosen its battlefield. Lines were drawn. Alliances declared. The fallout wasn't limited to that explosive sit-down. It was now living, breathing, and multiplying across every platform in real time. The confessional began quietly, but what unfolded was anything but ordinary. Yandy's hand trembled slightly as she spoke, her words raw and unfiltered. Then came the moment no one could ignore. She slipped the wedding ring from her finger. No shouting. No dramatic gesture. Just a silent act that carried more weight than any argument could. The absence of that ring said everything her voice struggled to admit. Her reflection cut deep. Yandy admitted she felt hollow, drained from years of holding the foundation together while waiting for him to step up. She said she still loved him but questioned if love was enough when exhaustion had replaced joy. Her confession was steady, but her eyes revealed the cracks of someone who had been holding back tears for far too long. Viewers felt the sting. It wasn't anger. It was resignation. Then came Mendeecees. His confessional told a different story, but one no less heartbreaking. He admitted he never wanted Yandy to feel unsupported. He spoke about his sacrifices, his battles behind the curtain, and the frustration of being seen as absent when he believed he was fighting in silence. His voice cracked when he said he still saw Yandy as his partner, but he couldn't understand why his efforts never felt like enough. It wasn't rage. It was confusion, mixed with fear of losing everything. Side by side, their confessions painted a devastating picture. Yandy, questioning whether she could keep carrying the weight. Mendeecees, bewildered that his efforts had gone unseen. Two people, speaking the same language of love but living in different dialects of pain. And that ring. That small, shining band, now absent from her finger, echoed louder than any spoken word. It symbolized not just doubt, but the terrifying possibility of finality. Fans who saw the clip gasped, realizing they were witnessing more than television drama. They were watching the unraveling of a bond once believed unbreakable. By the end of the confessional, one truth lingered. Their words hurt, but their silence hurt more. A marriage wasn't just cracking, it was collapsing in slow motion, leaving viewers breathless and bracing for what would come next. The battle between Yandy and Mendeecees didn't just stay between them. Its shadow stretched into their home, into their children's lives. Yandy voiced the fear every parent dreads. What if the kids start to feel the fracture? She worried that the silence, the tension, the unspoken words would eventually seep into the walls and shape the way their children viewed love. For her, this wasn't only about two adults clashing. It was about protecting innocence from a storm they never asked to endure. Mendeecees countered with his own fears. He insisted he was trying to shield the kids, to keep them away from the chaos. But Yandy pressed back. Shielding wasn't enough. Presence, unity, consistency. That's what she demanded. The more she spoke, the clearer it became. She wasn't only tired as a wife. She was worn down as a mother carrying both emotional and practical weight. The Puerto Rico trip loomed like an unavoidable storm. What was supposed to be a reset for the group now felt like a battlefield waiting to erupt. Friends who once looked forward to the getaway now braced themselves for impact. The air buzzed with nervous energy, whispers of, "What's going to happen there?" Rashida, often the peacemaker, confided that she had never seen Yandy so distant, so cold. Scrappy admitted he was uneasy, saying the tension felt bigger than just an argument. It felt like a breaking point. Castmates rallied, some offering comfort, others urging counseling. A few pushed for therapy, believing only an outside voice could break through their stubborn defenses. But others doubted if counseling could even work when trust itself had been fractured so deeply. Every opinion added another layer of pressure, as if the couple's private pain had become a public trial with too many judges. The looming trip to Puerto Rico became more than just a storyline. It became a symbol. Could the island heal what was broken? Or would the distance only magnify the cracks? For the group, it was clear. They weren't just watching friends argue. They were witnessing a family teetering on the edge of collapse. By the end of the discussion, one truth hung over them all. The fight wasn't just Yandy versus Mendeecees. It was parents versus the possibility of tearing their children's world apart. And as the Puerto Rico trip approached, the weight of that reality grew heavier with every passing moment. The night's conclusion did not come with shouting, nor with a dramatic walkout. It came with something colder, sharper, and far more devastating. Yandy, Voice lowered yet filled with exhaustion, asked the question that had been building all along. "What's next for us?" Her words didn't land as a casual inquiry. They landed like a verdict, a challenge, a final test of whether there was still a map forward. Mendeecees paused. His eyes did not shift away. His voice, once defensive and firm, softened into something that carried the weight of defeat. 3 words spilled out, words that sliced the room in silence. "I don't know." The power of that statement was not in volume, but in its emptiness. No assurance. No vow to fight. No promise of change. Just uncertainty. For Yandy, it was confirmation of the fear she had been trying to push aside. For the audience, it was the sound of a door creaking shut on a marriage millions once thought untouchable. The silence that followed was suffocating. Seconds stretched like hours. Neither of them moved, and that stillness screamed louder than any argument ever could. Viewers watching felt their own hearts race, waiting for someone to break it, waiting for a glimmer of hope that never came. Instead, the quiet grew heavier, pressing down like a weight that neither seemed capable of lifting. Yandy's face told a story her lips refused to voice. Disappointment? Fatigue. The hollow ache of realizing her partner had no plan, no conviction, no certainty about their future. For her, the silence was louder than betrayal. It was emptiness. It was loneliness in real time. And it was crushing. Mendeecees' expression carried its own torment. His "I don't know" wasn't casual indifference. It was the honesty of a man who had run out of words, out of defenses, and out of direction. He looked like someone staring into the ruins of something he once thought unshakable, unable to find the blueprint to rebuild. His confession was haunting precisely because it was real. That moment, those 3 words, immediately became the night's quote. Fans rushed online to replay it, dissect it, and react in disbelief. Memes were born, hashtags exploded, and timelines flooded with debates. Some argued his honesty was a cry for help. Others saw it as the ultimate admission of defeat. But nearly everyone agreed. It was the most chilling moment of the entire confrontation. The fallout stretched beyond the couple. Friends and castmates, already uneasy, recognized the gravity of what they had witnessed. The "I don't know" wasn't just indecision. It was a cliffhanger, a wound left open, a declaration that the future of this marriage was not only in question, but possibly beyond repair. And so the night closed not with resolution, but with uncertainty. The screen faded, leaving that haunting line echoing in viewers' minds. "I don't know." Words so simple yet devastating enough to shift the narrative of an entire season. A marriage, once celebrated, now suspended in limbo. Fans left holding their breath, waiting for the next chapter, unsure if they would see reconciliation or the final unraveling. The morning after brought no relief. The tension of the previous night lingered like smoke after a fire. Conversations online only intensified, with fans dissecting every word, every glance, and especially the haunting "I don't know." The fan base split into factions. Some defended Yandy, arguing she had carried the weight far too long. Others sympathized with Mendeecees, claiming his honesty was raw, human, and misunderstood. The debate spread quickly. Was the ring removal the true end or just a warning shot? Was his uncertainty a sign of cowardice or an authentic cry for guidance? These weren't simple questions, and the answers seemed just as divided as the couple themselves. The aftermath revealed one truth: the story was bigger than the argument. It was about love tested under unbearable strain, and what happens when promises clash with reality. But now the spotlight shifts to you, the viewer. Where do you stand? Should Yandy and Mendeecees fight to rebuild through counseling? Do they need distance, time apart, and space to breathe? Or has the moment come to walk away for good? Drop your thoughts below. Share your side, your advice, your truth. Because this story is no longer theirs alone. It's a conversation shaking every timeline, and your voice matters.